You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
We are streaming live right now on CBS News Bay Area, continuing to track the atmospheric river, taking a live look outside in San Francisco. We just learned that the flood advisories for the Bay Area have been canceled by the National Weather Service. So we're making progress as we make our way through these atmospheric rivers. Thanks for joining us this Thursday afternoon. I'm Ann Magovic, and let's go to that breaking news. All evacuation orders have now been lifted in Santa Cruz County. The county had issued evacuation orders for areas along the San Lorenzo River because of heavy rains and runoff. But again, Santa Cruz Mountains, all of those evacuation orders are now lifted. There are still some evacuation warnings in Sonoma County. Those are for low-lying areas along the Russian River. That is from unincorporated Healdsburg to Jenner. Yeah, check out these strong winds in Santa Rosa. This video was taken at around 2 this morning when the worst of it was coming down. The rain falling almost diagonally, also flooded some intersections there. Checking out the flooding in Gilroy. This video was taken on Wren Avenue by Ronan. A little after 6 this morning, you can see the water there up to the bottom of some cars and pooling there on those sidewalks. Let's bring in meteorologist Darren Peck because it is not over yet.
Nope, it is not. Although the way I've been putting this is we've seen about 80% of what this storm has.
I like to see that also.
I know. It's higher because when we started doing this at 1 o'clock.
You said 40.
Very good. So when you can see this is we're not done. So let's go through the details on this. If we look at the last hour of radar, and I think that's usually one of the more useful ways to look at this, is just kind of starting right out of the gate. So here we are at 3 o'clock, and you can see from the last hour of rain, there's steady showers that have been moving across the North Bay. See if we can get the whole bay in here so we can kind of see what it looks like down in the South Bay and Tri-Valley, and everybody can pick out their part. This is one of the final waves where we get widespread rain like this, where like one entire region of the bay is all experiencing rain at the same time. Let me show you how that will change. We'll switch from looking at live radar up to the last hour, and instead, I'm going to play you what happens from now through tomorrow morning. And what you'll notice is after we kind of get through these widespread bands of rain, which we do here as we get into the early afternoon, that's the one we're looking at now, this is what happens. And this now becomes much more on again, off again, hit and miss showers. They get in, they get out, they don't last long. There's going to be way more time when you are not getting rained on than when you are. But every once in a while, a light, isolated shower could move through, and you'll get a little more rain on top of what you've already had. Notice the time here, Friday morning, 9 a.m., done. So we got to get through that point. Let's look at some of the headlines on here. Flooding has been a concern with this system, primarily from the standpoint of rainfall totals. So what I'll show you on here is how much rain we've gotten so far. Keeping in mind there's still a little more rain to go on top of these numbers. But if you look at what we've done, up in the North Bay, Santa Rosa, always a good indicator, a little over 2 inches. But we've gotten like 3 to 5 inches through the higher terrain of Sonoma County. That means watershed of Russian River, Mark West, all of those usual places that become problematic still have several hours to go where the water needs to flow through those watersheds, and you could encounter some degree of minor flooding there. This is why this flood watch stays in effect until Saturday. It's going to take some time for the water to go through the landscape. But there is another way to think about what the flood watch is messaging. If we look at the rest of the immediate bay here, see these rainfall totals? Look at Redwood City on the bottom of your screen here. You got about 2.5 inches of rain so far. 2 inches so far out in Pleasanton. And the other aspect of this flood watch is there's going to be some minor urban roadway issues. We've already been showing you video of that throughout the morning so far, and that's going to stay possible throughout the remainder of this afternoon. As we continue to see some of the lingering showers, putting a little more rain, you could run into trouble spots on roadways, low-lying intersections, and things like that. And the last thing we want to point out, there is some good news on this now. Let's get down to the Santa Cruz Mountains. We've seen heavier rainfall down here than just about anywhere else from this system. So Boulder Creek's already picked up about 5 inches of rain, and this now takes into account the watersheds of the San Leandro River. We've gotten to the point from the National Weather Service now where they have said, look, we're past the greatest degree of concern on this. We don't anticipate significant flooding happening down here. But you still want to be very mindful if you are anywhere near the San Lorenzo River or any of those other tributary streams and creeks that have to deal with that amount of rain. And I would say still from now through tomorrow. Just remain aware of your surroundings. Near any of those streams or creeks, if you know the area well, you know where the trouble spots usually tend to happen. And even with that knowledge, any tributary streams or creeks could still be problematic, not to mention some roadway flooding down there. So Santa Cruz Mountains remains an elevated concern, but it looks less concerning than it did just about 2 hours ago, thanks to notifications coming in from the National Weather Service down there. All right, that covers the rainfall totals. That's pretty good for us for a 24-hour period. There's one other aspect to this, and you no doubt noticed this over the course of the last 12 hours. Bit of a wind situation going on with this particular storm. And when we visualize where the concerns are for that, areas in gold along the coast is where we have a high wind watch. Areas in tan, where we have a wind advisory. Let's kind of point out what the difference is on that. The coast has been subject to 50-mile-an-hour gusts. Let's walk this down the peninsula for a second and check in on Half Moon Bay. 50-mile-an-hour gust here. Now, this was peak wind speed through very early this morning. That was the worst of the wind from this system. The advisories stay in place because the wind is not going to turn off completely for the next few hours. So you could still see gusts, probably not approaching these numbers anymore, but up to around 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds. Let's visualize that aspect of this. If we take a look at the wind streams, I'm going to start us from this afternoon and go through tomorrow. So you're going to see the color codes start out here in the afternoon, and there's red. This is where we were getting our strong winds on the coast. But watch what happens now going forward. Here we are on Friday morning. These winds are much lighter. You can see them slowing down. The color code is much less aggressive looking. We're now into the light shades of green, and your timestamp down there shows you by the time we get to tomorrow, we're out of this from a wind standpoint. You've seen the worst of the wind. You've also picked up the bulk of the rain, and now we just kind of need to stay aware of our surroundings, certainly through this afternoon. And once we get into tomorrow afternoon, things will begin to quiet down and calm down from that standpoint. All right, so that covers the wind aspect, and it covers the local aspect of this storm here at home. Let's just take a look at this storm now in a somewhat more overall vantage point. See what the live radar looks like. We'll play this through, and you can see how we're seeing some of the better rain here. Maybe a few more isolated upticks, and then tomorrow things quiet down. That's one way of looking at this. But let's look at the storm in terms of the way it's put together to understand why we don't finish with this completely until tomorrow afternoon, and why Southern California is only just now starting to feel the most concerning aspects of this storm as far as those burn scars are concerned. They still have the next 5 to 6 hours where they're really going to be seeing some of the most problematic impacts from this. So here's the storm as a whole. I think you really visualize what this thing is built of when you look at it on the water vapor imagery. So there's the engine. That's the area of low pressure that's driving all of this. And what this does is it pulls in the atmospheric river down here. Watch the moisture that gets pulled in. We got it last night, and now Southern California is getting their branch of it. We'll look at it a slightly different way, and you can see that now. Center of the storm here, atmospheric river right there. And now look where that's pointed. So this is what we had last night and early this morning. That has since marched progressively farther south. As this has moved farther south, it's pulled that with it. So we need that to leave before we finally get a break. So when we look at this on the futurecast, we'll see how that system does start to pull away tonight, which is why things quiet down for us. So that leaves, and then Southern California gets a break. But I think we really need to look at Southern California for a moment and try and get a little more specific. They've got a much higher degree of concern here. The areas in red show you where there is a 40% chance, from just a rainfall standpoint, on it, really for any landscape, 40% chance this will be enough rain that you could exceed flash flood concerns. But there's a whole different level of concern here, obviously, because those are the areas where the burn scars are, both from the Palisade and the Eaton fire. So if we put the futurecast on here, look at the time. This gets us really to the next hour. So we've gone all the way ahead to 4:15, and that is when the bulk of that rain's going right across LA. I know it looks kind of messy on here. Downtown LA sits there. Palisade fire's right there. Eaton fire's right here. So they're both right in this plume of widespread, steady, consistent, guaranteed high amounts of rainfall at this point. And it's going to go for a few hours. So from 4 o'clock this afternoon, it's already been raining down there for about 2 hours, until about 6 o'clock. That's a steady period of time where the landscape in those two burn scars is not in any condition to hold that amount of water. So not only do you get mudslides, but you can also get something far more concerning now, which are debris flows, which is not where just the top layer of mud slides off, but where whole sheets of the mountain with trees, boulders, cars, whatever happens to get in its way, will get pulled down the mountainside because nothing's holding those hills in place anymore, thanks to the fire removing most of the vegetation, but also the fire kind of putting a sheen over the landscape where the water just hits it almost like asphalt and then can run off real quickly and start taking things with it. So that is the overwhelming concern for the burn scars in Southern California through the remainder of this afternoon and evening. And then you can see the back edge will clear out for them. And there's one last little risk as we go overnight down there, which is the isolated thunderstorms, which can put a good little cell, like here's one, Eaton Fire would sit right at about here. We're not going to say that's exactly where the thunderstorm's going to develop, but you look at that and you go, okay, isolated thunderstorms more likely to pop up over the mountains, and that could end up over one of the burn scars. So that's the problematic issue in Southern California. Could be a much bigger story, obviously, than what we've got going on here at home. We'll go back to the last hour of radar, though, in case here we are in the 3 o'clock hour. If you're trying to make your plans, at least in the near term, if you've got to get in the car, let's say, and you just have to go run an errand or whatever it may be. Remember that flood watch, that's Bay Area wide, and that does include roadway concerns, low-lying intersections. So for now, and certainly through the rest of this afternoon, if you approach an intersection, you can't tell how deep the water is, you got to turn around, don't drown. That's the phrase to remember today. And of course, any streams or creeks, whether it's North Bay and Santa Cruz Mountains, the degree of concern now has lessened, but we're not done. So stay real mindful in the Santa Cruz Mountains near any streams, creeks.
Yes, and as you mentioned, those mudslides as well in some of those real steep areas. Could be a rough commute, so we'll keep you posted as the night continues. Luckily, that rain wrapping up. Thanks, Darren. It's, of course, not just the rain and wind. The Bay Area dealing with earthquakes as well, apparently, this afternoon. Hayward has been rocked by 4 earthquakes today. Nothing huge, but the latest one happening just over an hour ago, that was a 3.7 magnitude. And these are all on the Hayward Fault near Hayward. All right, back to our first alert storm coverage. The storm knocked down some trees across the Bay Area. This is on the Napa-Sonoma County line. This tree is blocking Ramal Road near Skaggs Island Road. We're also seeing some damage in the Oakland Hills. This tree fell across Skyline Boulevard and Brandy Rock Way. You can see the entire roadway there blocked. This is just south of Skyline High School. Parts of Santa Cruz County seeing some rock slides and mudslides this afternoon, like here on Soquel San Jose Road. The CHP is warning drivers to be careful out there and obviously report any hazards. That is the sound of dangerous surf pounding the beaches in Pacifica. The National Weather Service says the entire coastline could see waves up to 45 feet through tomorrow.
They're a lot bigger than they were yesterday. Yesterday it was almost like a bay here, and now it's just the opposite. But I stay out of the ocean.
Yeah, the National Weather Service warns everybody to do the same. The storm also forcing the Oakland Zoo to close today. The zoo says if you have any reservations for today, you will be automatically refunded. Also, SF Rec and Park experiencing closures because of the weather. Stern Grove and Pine Lake are closed, as well as all golf courses, the Japanese Tea Garden and the Botanical Garden in Golden Gate Park. All right, stay with us all afternoon as we continue to track this storm. We're going to have live weather updates at the top of every hour this afternoon, streaming on the CBS News app.